All right, let's dive into something that's becoming absolutely essential: AI management systems, or AIMS for short. We're going to break down exactly how these frameworks give you the control, the monitoring, and most importantly, the auditability you need to wrangle powerful AI systems. So let's get into it.
And really, this is the fundamental question, isn't it? We have this incredible, game-changing technology, but with all that power, you've got to have serious control. So how do you build a system that's not just smart, but one you can actually prove is secure and trustworthy? Well, that's the exact problem an AI management system is built to solve. Okay, so first things first, you can't possibly control what you haven't taken the time to define. The very first step in building one of these systems is to map out every potential way it could go wrong. This is often done through a formal AI system impact assessment, and its job is to define the entire landscape of risks the system needs to be ready for. And what's really crucial here is just how broad these categories are. We're not just talking about stopping obviously bad outputs. We're talking about the subtle stuff too. Things like preventing small privacy violations, catching those weird AI hallucinations, and guarding against misuse, like a prompt injection attack, where a clever user tries to trick the AI into ignoring its own safety rules. These 6 areas together, they form the whole threat landscape. So once you know what you're up against, how do you stop it? Well, you don't just build one big wall and hope for the best. The gold standard is what we call a defense-in-depth architecture. It's all about creating multiple, different layers of protection that all work together. And you can see that whole journey right here. A user's prompt comes in and immediately hits the input layer, which basically acts like a bouncer at a club, filtering out obviously malicious stuff. Then, the application layer checks if the user even has permission to be there. The core model and safety layers are where the AI's behavior is guided and scanned. And finally, before anything goes back to the user, the output layer acts as one last guardrail. The whole thing is wrapped up in an access layer, making sure only the right people can even start this process. Now let's look at the actual tech that makes those layers work. We're talking about things like content moderation APIs, checking the input, and policy checks on the output. But one of the most important tools in the backs is something called retrieval grounding. Honestly, this is a total game changer for stopping hallucinations. What it does is force the AI to base its answers only on a set of verified, trusted documents you've given it. It literally can't invent a fake company policy because its knowledge is grounded in reality. This is where the theory gets very, very real. Okay, so we've built our defenses. They're layered, they're smart. But what happens when someone tries to break them? Because, let's be honest, they will. A truly robust system has to have a plan for that moment of attack. This is it. This is the real test of a system's resilience. It's one thing to have rules, but it's a whole other thing to see what your system does when someone actively challenges those rules. The key thing to see here is that the system's response is intelligent. It's not just a simple no. For a really obvious attack, like telling the AI to ignore all previous instructions, sure, it can just block the request flat out. But for something a little more nuanced, it might sanitize the response. Just remove the harmful bit. Or it could even redirect the user to a safer, more helpful path. And what if the user just keeps trying? Well, that's when the system escalates. It can start by rate limiting them to slow them down. If the attempts are more serious, it can fire off an immediate alert straight to the security and governance teams. And every single attempt is logged as a policy violation, feeding data into more advanced systems that can spot coordinated attacks or weird anomalies. None of this really matters if you don't have an evidence trail. For true control, for any kind of real auditability, you have to record everything. Every single action, every system decision, and every response has to be logged in a way that can't be changed. And these logs aren't just tossed into one giant messy file. They're carefully categorized and sent to the right place. So your basic interaction logs might go into the app database, but critical security events, those get piped directly into the CM, where the security team can see them in real time. And the audit logs are kept safe in a special governance repository, making sure you have a clean, tamper-proof record for later. The secret sauce is in the details. This is what makes real traceability possible. Every log entry doesn't just capture what happened, the prompt and the output, it captures why. It records the system's decision and the specific reason for it. So if a user's request for personal data got blocked, the log shows exactly that, and it notes that it was because of a sensitive data policy. It's an open and shut case. So, having all this data is fantastic, but the data itself isn't the point. It's what you do with it that matters. And that brings us to the final, and you could argue the most important stage, using all that evidence to create a cycle of continuous improvement. And this is that loop in action. You log and analyze the data to spot trends. Then you proactively test the system using things like red teaming to find weaknesses before the bad guys do. You use what you find to make your controls even better. And then, crucially, you feed those insights all the way back to the beginning to update your original risk assessments. It's a perpetual cycle of getting smarter and safer. So, to bring this all home, a strong AI management system really follows these 5 key steps. You start by identifying your risks. Then, you implement layered controls to stop them. You have a smart plan to handle bypass attempts. You record every single interaction for traceability. And you use all that evidence to continuously improve. That right there, that's the blueprint for building a resilient, auditable, and genuinely trustworthy AI. And that leaves us with one final thought. We throw around the term trusting AI a lot, but trust isn't magic. It's built on a foundation of demonstrable control and hard evidence. So the real question isn't whether your AI is powerful. It's how are you going to prove it's trustworthy?